Welcome to Dice the Table Productions Tactical Onion. This is Creature Feature Friday. And this particular day, we're going to check out a whole new creature. But first, a little update. Last week we talked about the fact that Creature Law 1 doesn't have orcs and goblins, so we made a little lowly test orc, right? Um, well, Bob Morris reached out to me to let me know, hey, Dave, guess what? If you go to RoleMaster Unified Log and load up the races, you can click and drag orc. Where is he there? Let's see. Right over here, boom. Only available during change level, so you change the level and you can add it. I already did it with the lesser orc. Um, So you can do this with greater orc, gray orc, half, all the races. You can do this, including troll, right? Goblin, elf, gnoll, uh, hobgoblin, kobold, all of these guys. Want to make a human? Here you go. Click, drag, drop them over there when you're doing the whole change level thing. And they will automatically inherit all of the talents of said creature, provided it's under the core law races. All right, that being said, we're going to move on. What are we going to cover today? I wonder what are we going to cover today? I'll give you a hint. No, it's not bats. It's the vampire. The Creature Law 1 vampire. There are three flavors. There's the Vampire Lord, the Vampire Major, and the Vampire Sovereign. And I did that in kind of a weird order. It's Major, Lord, Sovereign. So the Sovereign is the most powerful. The Major is the least powerful. And you may notice on my little actors tab here, I have the Vampire, Enthralled Spawn. It's a little side project. We'll talk about him in a minute. But let's talk about the Major. Now, all three of these gentlemen are very similar. The talents are all basically the same. I'll go over those real briefly. Not all of them, but I'll go through. Immunity, elemental damage, mental spells. That's important. Cannot be affected by mental spells and effects. Immunity stun, leeches damage, hungry for blood, proof against a bunch of non-magical weapons. That's going to be a big deal later on. Regeneration, yeah, the sun susceptibility. That's kind of a classic one. Lifeless and unbreathing. Those are physical characteristics things. Those can be tells if somebody's on the hunt for a vampire. We'll talk about being on the hunt for a vampire in a little bit. Light sensitivity, natural weaponry, both those, that's the bite and the claw. Night vision, got to see at night when he's stalking people, right? Life sense, that's a 10-foot total radius. Senses all living things within a 5 feet per tier radius, able to distinguish between strong and weak life essences. That's going to make it really hard to sneak up on a vampire, if you know what I mean. All right, now I want to talk about uh, flavor wise, and I don't mean the flavor of blood. I mean role playing flavor as a GM. If you're playing a vampire, I want you to be aware of these three things right here: missing sense, feel and touch; missing sense, smell; missing sense, taste. Specifically, feel and touch. That's a big one. Um, you suffer a negative 100 penalty on actions requiring the sense, if it is possible at all, and from negative 20 to negative 50 on actions which would benefit from the sense. Okay, he's not picking a lot of locks, right? Necessarily. Uh, these are these are tells that you as the GM could play up to give a clue if people are on the hunt for a vampire. Now, let's move on. Diet, drinks blood. Distinct odor. This is another one of those things. Smells like the grave, or smells like pennies, or smells like dirt. This can be a distinct odor thing. How's he going to cover that up? Lots of perfume, lots of cologne, right? He always reeks of like cheap cologne or whatever. But right here, other than seeing a vampire feeding on somebody, Seeing a vampire have no reflection, that's a big tell. Okay. Now, we're also going to talk about, real briefly, spawn, right? Vampire spawn. On draining the last of the victim's life force, the creature creates a spawn of itself. That's really important. That's a lot. There's a lot of possibility in that single sentence right there. All right. Now, restricted diet, blood, sleep requirement has to rest on the soil of its native country. If such soil is unavailable, it will be unable to rest and will incur increasing fatigue penalties. It's kind of a big one with the classic vampire hunt. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right. So, it's a particular type, undead vampire. Let's talk about undead. Really briefly. Killing undead in RoleMaster Creature Law, page 320. Okay. Uh, it's a real pain in the ass. Okay. They slowly regain hits through the talent regeneration, magical and magio and severed body parts, making them extremely difficult to kill using criticals. Not to mention he's immune to crits from like non-magical stuff, like your standard swords and whatnot. You're not going to do a lot of crits. You can beat the crap out of them hit point wise, right? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the only criticals capable of permanently damaging undead are acid, electricity, heat, and holy criticals. Although some undead might be immune to certain criticals mentioned here. However, any critical that has a slain effect applied to it on undead or otherwise, against humanoids, dead things, abominations, etc., cannot be cured in any way and will permanently disfigure the undead. So, slaying weapons, slaying undead weapons, really useful. Okay. Holy water, other special substances may cause damage beyond that which may be expected. Killing the undead means bringing their hit points down to their death hits. That's concussive hits plus their brawn body development rank bonus, at which point it will discoagulate into tiny pieces. Applying any of the damage mentioned above to the pieces, burying it on sacred, consecrated ground, sprinkling it with holy water, applying any of the bane specifically mentioned to the undead's description, or depositing the undead remains in a fast-moving stream will stop the regeneration process and terminate the undead. Alternately, it may be done by damage using the criticals, acid, electricity, heat, and holy to bring the undead to just 0 concussive hit points. Lastly, it should be noted that a repel undead spell that disintegrates an undead or animated corpse will permanently kill it. Also, when an undead has been reduced to below death hits, casting a repel undead spell sufficient to affect it will destroy the undead if it fails its resistance roll. All right. So, even concussive hits, you get it down to 0, doesn't mean it's necessarily dead. It's also very important to note that the characters probably aren't going to know that when they first encounter a vampire, right? Now, the players may suspect that they've got to do all sorts of crazy things to slay the dragon, so to speak, but the characters might not. Now, let's actually talk about the vampire itself. Alrighty, has pretty high presence. Everything else kind of not bad. Okay, self-discipline, a little low, right? Likes to feed on blood, might act out a little bit. And again, this is the lowest level one that's in creature law 1. It's the level 24. All right, 77 hit points. What's that going to tell you? At level 24, this guy is not a fighter. He is a glass cannon, sort of. Not even really a cannon. Um, yes, he's got a lot of power points. That's a lot. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. All right. Conditions, skills. Skills. A little perceptive, not super perceptive. He's got that ability to not get snuck up on by anything within 10 feet of it. The whole life sense thing. All right. Doesn't have any battle expertise, doesn't have any body discipline. This right here should tell you never get this guy in a tanking situation. Body development, half, right? Again, not a lot. Combat expertise, not a lot there either. Again, not a toe-to-toe fighter. He's not even a ranged sniper guy. He's got no range game, right? His melee weapons, meh, whatever. Yeah, his unarmed bite and claw are pretty damn impressive because those are his weapons. There's natural weapons. They're the only thing he's got going on. But again, he's not built to stand toe to toe. He has armor type 1, right? See, right here, armor type 1. He's not going to go toe to toe. He should never go toe to toe. He should, the vampire, this type of vampire, because you can always make different types of vampires, but the classic creature law 1 vampire shouldn't be going toe to toe, should be doing everything to avoid toe to toe fighting. And he has a lot of abilities in his toolbox to prevent that. And we're going to talk about those. So we're going to get down here, not a lot of crafting, composition, delving, environmental gymnastics. He's a vampire. Lore-wise, history appropriate. You can play around with that a lot. Okay. You can play around with some of this stuff. Language, pick one.
Pick 10. I don't care. Do you need him to speak it? He speaks it.
Medical, I could see having some fun customizing a little bit here. Maybe a vampire with poison mastery. That would be kind of hilarious, especially if you could poison people in ways that would actually lower their resistance roll to mental attacks and mentalism spells. That would be hilarious. Fucked up, but hilarious. What if he was a Dr. Vampire MD? Give him some medicine. He's gonna train you, but he'll nurse you back to health so he can train you again. Yeah, you can play around with these a little bit. Obviously, you're not gonna give control lycanthropy to a vampire unless you want to give him lycanthropy, which is really a dick move for everybody, both the vampire and the players. All right, running wise, he's not much of a runner, but he's got it there. Performance, I would almost want to do acting just to okay, he's got to feign emotions, right? So maybe the really old ones, you give them some acting so they could fake it. But here we go. PowerPoint development. This is where we start getting into the obvious meat, right? But before we get to spells, I want to talk about the roleplay skills. Influence, charm, incredibly charming, and not in a magical sense. Yes, they are in a magical sense as well, but anyway, this right here, influence, charm. So many encounters with player characters. You don't have to rely on spells. You can just talk to them. You can be charming. You could be inconspicuous. You'd be the last person they fucking suspect to be a vampire, and that's exactly what the vampire wants. The vampire wants them to be the very last person that you would suspect. Now, if at some such point the players figure out they're in a vampire murder mystery hunt, the players are going to probably figure out who the vampire is. They're going to probably try to figure it out. They have to put together those clues, right? Now, when they're doing that, that's where social awareness kicks in. The social awareness, this skill develops awareness of the motives and social maneuvers of those around you. If people start asking questions about Bob the innkeeper, who's really a vampire, Bob the innkeeper has a really good chance to know it's coming, right? And as soon as he identifies that there are hunters that are possibly on his trail, that's where things get tricky. First of all, Bob the vampire, the innkeeper, and I'm just picking that because I really like the idea of an innkeeper vampire. I think there's a lot of potential there for some shenanigans, just overall. Anyway, yeah, so regardless of being an innkeeper or not, 154 plus on a stocking, that's pretty good. Now, let's talk about spells. Mind Death and Mind Domination. This is the lowest level vampire, right? So the other ones have the same spell list, but just a lot more of it. Mind Death. Let's talk about it. Very first thing on there. Target's member your 20-minute period is temporarily eliminated. After a period of 1 hour, of up to 1 hour, the target will remember all that transpired during that period. Okay, that's regrettable for, the guy that wants to drop this, drop it, make you forget that he's a vampire. He takes off. Well, he got up to an hour head start. Oh, but look, the very next one. Forget one. Target forgets 10 contiguous minutes today. The caster determines which 10 minutes is forgotten. And it's fucking pretty much permanent if he fails the roll. So right there. Oh, you caught me drinking somebody's friggin' blood?
Poof! You've forgotten what you just saw.
Good luck catching that vampire. And this is its level 2 mind death spell. What else you got? Skill amnesia. Okay, this one. Anytime the target attempts to use, roll maneuver using, a skill with a strong mental component, one for which memory or reasoning stat bonus is used, there's a 20% chance that the victim will not be able to recollect the skill at all and cannot use it again until having slept. Okay? So, yes, there's resistance rolls and blah, 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 blah. But, like, this is a low level skill, right? So, this vampire hits, I don't know, the mage, right? Let's just hit the mage with this shit. Let's see. Let's go down here, right? Huh? Spells. Yeah, those are Those are all memory skills. So I hit you. I, the vampire, as an asshole, have figured out that the party is on my trail. They don't maybe necessarily know who I am, but I know I'm being hunted. I know there's hunters because again, that social influence skill. I was on you on day one. I was on you before you realized that there was a vampire. I knew you guys were up to no good. I'm gonna hit you with some skill amnesia. Boom. Okay, you won't be able to use that skill. 20% chance that you won't be able to use that skill for until you sleep. Right, and that's level 4.
It gets worse at higher levels, guys.
Skill amnesia 2. Duration is 1 week per 10 for failure. Okay. Oh yeah, skill amnesia 1. When you fail the resistance roll, for every 10 points you fail, it's 1 day, right? So skill amnesia 2, it's 1 week per 10 day, per 10 failure, right? So I nail you with high level skill amnesia, and you could end up losing, the ability to cast an entire spell list, right? So if you got a fire mage and I hit you with, yeah, and you try to use fire, and oh shit, 1 in 5% chance, 1 in 5 chance you forget. Okay, good luck. What the hell? I mean, that's just sucks. Now let's talk about another one. Lost experience. Target loses 5% of his collected experience, i.e., experience points. That is all sorts of fucked up. But look at mind death. Target mind blanks out for a period of 10 minutes each day at random. Target is incapable of activity during this period. That kind of sucks. It's random though. I mean, that's not the best, right? Um, yeah, it gets worse. Okay, this is the mind death stuff. This is just messing with experience and remembering shit and using skills that require memory. Now, let's look at mind domination. All right. Mind lock is the one I really want you to look at. Okay. Caster and target are locked in mental combat until the caster cancels the spell or the spell is dispelled, or either the caster or the target has a resistance roll failure of 30 or greater. Okay. Um, the one failing by 30 becomes unconscious. So the vampire looks somebody in the eye and goes, "You'll do what I say." Blah 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 blah. Right. And then basically every single round they go back and forth doing resistance rolls, and the first one to fail by 30 or more falls unconscious. Now, this as a level 2 spell kind of sucks because the vampire's not doing anything else. Oh no, he's locked in mental combat with somebody and can't possibly do anything else except mind invasion, the next spell. As mind lock, except while target cannot take any action during the mental struggle, the caster may act normal within the restrictions of maintaining concentration. So as long as he can maintain concentration, the vampire can run around and do stuff. So yeah, as long as a vampire stays within 100 feet of its victim, it could do this and then knock people out. Granted, you got to fail your resistance roll by 30. That would suck, right? Oh, what's this next thing? The next FM spell right here, cast by the caster of this spell, cast within 1 minute of completing the spell, will have a special RR penalty of -10. So, boom, I hit you, I go dominance, mind invasion. So when the target of the caster does their resistance roll, they're going to have a -10 to it. That's not too bad. It's only -10. I only need them to fail by -30 to knock them conscious, right? But dominance 2. Now this is again the lowest level vampire. Let's see if what level of dominance he has. Dominance 5. So I can incur a -25 penalty on my target's resistance roll, and as soon as they fail to roll by 30 or more, they're unconscious. That's messed up. That's a great way to take out any of the casters, right? Okay, so you do the skill amnesia on the fire-based mage, and you do your mind lock mental whammy on the cleric. The cleric can't do anything while you're like evading people. The cleric can't do anything, and then all of a sudden drops unconscious because you dominance the guy. Um, yeah, that's just okay. That sucks. Um, oh yeah, let's look at this demonic possession. Okay, keep going. I don't see a concentrate on there, right? So demonically possessed. Oh, I don't know, the rogue or the fighter. I don't care. One of them. Basically, they then freak out and attack the other. So, like, if a rogue gets demonically possessed, they attack the fighter. The fighter gets demonically possessed, he attacks the rogue. Meanwhile, the wizard's trying to figure out why his fireball spell won't go off, and the cleric is drooling and unconscious because you just knocked him out. Damn. Right. Mind Thrall. As Mind Slave, except the target only gets a resistance roll once per week. Okay, let's look at Mind Slave. Oh, wait. Mind Slave true. As Mind Slave, except caster need not concentrate to command target. I think we need to go look at Mind Slave, don't you? Mind Slave. As Dominate, except target is a zombie until he succeeds in his once per day RR. Okay, so it requires concentration to order them around. But with Mind Slave true, it doesn't. Now, as domination. Domination. Target must obey caster. If the caster gives an order to do something completely alien to the target, it may make another resistance roll with a +25 modification. You can also use that dominance 5 to negate that +25 by doing a -25. So you could dominance dominate, dominance dominate, dominance dominate, blah blah blah. That's just wow. All right, now I want to point out mind battle as mind invasion except for range, and the caster gains +10 to his resistance rolls. So dominance 12, followed by mind battle, right? And you're 1,000 feet away from the cleric, right? And you get a +10, and they get a -25 to their roll, and you're 1,000 feet away. So you're out of range of everybody else, and all of a sudden, bam, cleric falls unconscious. Granted, if you're 1,000 feet away, the rest of the party can probably revive the cleric before you can really do anything. But I'm just telling you, you have up to 1,000 feet, right? Now, what does all this tell us? I think what this tells us is that the RoleMaster Unified Vampire is a sophisticated bad guy. He's not a throwaway single session POS bad guy. Certainly not a minion. Not those vampires. Now, you can make an enthralled spawn. And that's what I did here. I made a guy, I made him level 12. Basically what he did is I cloned the weakest vampire, the major, and I cut his level in half, and that's all I've done so far. So he's got 51 hit points, 152 PPP power points, PPP power points. But yes, you can make spawn, right? You can make throwaway spawn. Now, what does this mean? I think you could take this basic template and apply it to a town guard or some other NPC and make yourself a vampire brute. I think you totally make a vampire brute that is under the control of the master vampire. And while the heroic characters are trying to do their vampire murder mystery hunt, a lot of that is trips to the library and reading scrolls and role playing. But sometimes players get a little fussy. And so your enthralled spawn brute is the creature you throw at them to shake things up, right? To give him a little action, give him a little shot of adrenaline, right? And that guy, you could probably beefify them the hell out of him. I would honestly take a uh, I would look at the talents of a vampire, and I would probably grab a NPC town guard, and I would make a brute based off of that, right? Because they became a vampire. They didn't forget their skill set. The fighter didn't forget how to use a sword or how to run around in armor, right? Um, so sure, make a brute, right? And that's the creature, or those are the creatures that you use to break things up, to break up the monotony of the potential vampire hunt. You can also go an entirely different route and just clone yourself a vampire, change the level however you want, do all this thing, go into spells, give it different spells, go into skills, give them different skills, and just completely reskin a vampire. If you want to have a brutish, beat the crap out of the party bad guy, it's totally plausible. You go into here, you know times two his body development, and all of a sudden he's got well, let's just see, let's just have some fun. Change level, body development. Let's go times two. So he's got 51. Now he's got 109. Okay, it's still not like holy shit fantastic, right? Bring him back. Let's just hit cancel, right? Now, if we were to do the same thing, like let's say you were to take a vampire sovereign and you were going to look at the idea of making a vampire sovereign who has 95 hit points, and you're going to make him beefy boy. Now he's at 163, right? That's a lot, right? Granted, he's a little 36, and he's going to be getting hit by bad guys that can hit that and can damage him, right? But you give him some armor, put him in plate mail. What the hell? Why not, right? If you're gonna make a brute vampire, you can, and it's not that hard. You could do it half hour, 45 minutes tops. But what really you have to do before you do any of that is you have to think about what kind of vampire you want. What kind of scenario? What's the situation, right? Do you want a vampire that scares everybody, makes your party crap themselves? Do you want to have a vampire who is a combat monkey? You got to decide. And I've been thinking about it, and there's really, in my opinion, three sources you can draw from. Now, there are obviously more sources, but just I'm going to focus on one. Bram Stoker's Dracula, the classic story. Now, there's two ways you can go about this. One, you can read the book or the audiobook, either one. If you get the audiobook, there's the normal audiobook where they're just blah blah blah, and there's the theatric one where they throw in accents and whatnot. I kind of recommend you don't get that one. I don't want to shit on it too much, but um, Van Helsing's accent can be a little silly in some. I found it a little. I don't want to say off-putting, but it kind of took me out of the spirit. I mean, there's certain phraseologies that are used, and then you throw that in with like a kind of not exactly cheesy, but like okay, quasi cheesy accent, and it kind of took me out of the moment. Yeah. But that being said, still a really good book. And my only like other critique of the actual book, not the performance and whatnot, is that the very end, the final confrontation with Dracula is a little anticlimactic if you're looking for uh some action. You're looking for like a real fight. You're looking for like, get the characters have done the work. They've tracked down the bad guy and now it's go time. It's a little bit anticlimactic. That being said, the 1992-ish Bram Stoker's Dracula movie, the one with Winona Ryder in it and other people, yes, other people, other actors, just for some reason, like Winona Ryder is playing Mina, main female character. Uh, that one's pretty good. I like that one. It's not entirely novel accurate, but it's there. Now, what makes why am I bringing it up? Other than the fact that it's the original, it is the classic vampire hunt. So, first part of the book is kind of sets the scene. Blah blah blah. Dracula gets to Britain, gets to London, etc. Person starts to get sick. Lucy starts to get sick. Uh, they've done a lot of character development. You know who Lucy is by this time. Dracula shows up. And she gets sick and she dies. Spoiler. And it's tragic because the book has spent some time establishing who Lucy is, right? And Lucy has many male admirers, one of which she was going to get married to. And while she's sick, Dr. Van Helsing comes in and like realizes what's going on and she dies or something like that. And then like Mina starts getting sick. So like Dracula's working his way down the social network. Lucy's friend Mina gets sick, blah blah blah. And like Van Helsing figures it out because he had prior knowledge. He knew what a vampire was. He's done this dance before. So then he's got to convince the other male heroes of the story, and he does. He takes them to like Lucy's grave or to Lucy's mausoleum. They see Lucy, but is it Lucy? I don't know. Blah blah blah. He has to do the whole thing to convince them, and then they all get in. They all fall in line, and now it's let's go find the vampire. Let's hunt him down, etc. I also like the fact that they didn't make Mina into just a completely useless chick. She actually is smart. She's intelligent. She's crucial. She helps them stay organized. She writes down all these notes and helps them like all these little bits of evidence. She kind of like gathers it all together and goes, here's the notes. And it's like, okay, crap. This is like codified, like, this is everything we know. And she basically writes the Dracula Bible. And, spoiler again, basically what she's compiling are all the notes that end up being the book. Ta da! All right, that being said, they figure out that Dracula had he bought a bunch of different parcels of land, different like buildings and houses and whatnot, and he stashed coffins in each one of them, giving him basically safe houses and bolt holes all throughout the land. And they hunt them down and destroy them. This clues Dracula into the fact that the gig is up. People know know he's there. They know what he is. They know how to fuck with him. So then Dracula decides, I'm getting out of here, and he leaves. And he's going to go back to his home and then the race is on to track him down, confront him, and stop him. Because if he can get to his castle, he basically gets to like get in there and go, "Base, I'm free." Right? I'm safe. Fuck off. And it's this big race to stop that. And basically, if you haven't read the book or whatever, they have this big climactic confrontation where they catch up with Dracula and his minions, basically right outside the castle. Not like right outside, but like nearby. Um, and it's big climactic fight. Done. Cool. That is the stereotypical classic vampire hunt. First, you've got normal day-to-day life stuff going on. People start to get sick. People start dying. Somebody figures out what's going on. That's the big part right there because they walked into that with Van Helsing kind of already knowing what a vampire is. If Van Helsing didn't know what a vampire was, that story would have been a hell of a lot sadder and a lot more people would have died because he figures out like before Lucy dies. He figures out that like what's going on. He has a strong suspicion, very strong suspicion after like the first or second time he meets her, and then after she's dead, he's like, "Yeah, this is what's going on." Some of his information was incorrect, but like the actual gist of what was going on, he had that. So that's one type of vampire story you can tell. And you can do that one with the Rollmaster vampires as they currently are. You can do the vampire murder mystery hunt. The other two types of vampire story or vampire adventure, I'm gonna bring up. You'd have to make different types of vampires, and these two stories are very similar. First one, Stephen King's Salem's Lot. Single vampire, fairly powerful, not like magical, right? Not magical, but uh, potent, physically powerful, not like Superman powerful, but vampire. He's not running around like casting spells and shit. But single bad guy comes into town, and in a short amount of time takes over the town. Like I don't remember if it's a month or 2 or 3 months, but over a period of a couple of months, people start disappearing, people start getting sick, people start dying, they come back. Each one like goes and vampire makes master vampire makes a vampire on like the fourth night. On the fifth night, that vampire wakes up and drains somebody. By the seventh night, now you've got two vampires spawn. Oh, by the way, the main vampire has made two more vampires, and it's an exponential explosion in a you know northeastern U.S. town. Uh, People figure it out pretty quickly. I think it's like a kid figures out it's a vampire because he reads a bunch of books and shit. He reads comic books and oh, it's a vampire because the books told me this. When he convinces a writer that it's a vampire, and they recruit a group, kind of a third of the way into the story. There's a group, and then that group quickly is fucking just decimated. Um, to where at the end, the big confrontation again, spoilers. Uh, they fight the big bad vampire. They kill the big bad vampire, but they're unable to save the town. The town has basically been taken over, and the main character and the survivor, singular survivor, other than the main character, flee the town. And then the town's basically lost to the undead. And it opens up a whole lot of like, okay, it's a modern day or modern day ish. I think it was in the 80s when Salem's Lot was supposed to take place. Um, but how do you lose an entire town in the U.S. in the 80s or 90s or whatever? It's a little. There's some questions out there. Did they stop the plague entirely? Uh, Now I know in other Stephen King novels they mention Salem's Lot, and it's basically a lost town. It's toast. Okay, third vampire story, 30 Days of Night. So 30 Days of Night is a little bit different. Um, it's this Alaskan town that 30 days out of the year the sun goes down, it doesn't come up, and a bunch of vampires, a vampire clan, goes up. Right as the sun goes down, they show up, and the entire town has to deal with these vampires. Now these vampires are far more savage, bestial, physical, rip you to shreds brutes, and so that encounter is way more combat oriented. So, like, if you want to do a roll master sword and board toe to toe fight with vampires, that's the that's the direction you should be going. Now you're gonna have to remake the vampires. I would also de-level the hell out of them. I would pre-make the spawn so that you can actually kind of control the levels. And one of the major themes of 30 Days of Night is that the surviving humans were trying to like hide, evade, and escape the vampires. Now that one's a little unique and it poses some challenges because it was 30 days of night, which means 24/7, 30 friggin' days. There's no sunlight. There's no escape in that regard, and it's an isolated town. There's snow and ice, and it's fucking northern Alaska for fuck's sake. Um, so you have to if you're making that the story, you have to engineer a plausible way to trap the party in the town, give them a bunch of NPCs, get them to know the NPCs, and then pluck those motherfuckers away from the players one by one while they desperately try to evade, hide, and escape the threat. I would not, in that scenario, promote the idea of having the players go toe to toe and like, we're going to wipe out the vampires, because Rollmaster is really freaking brutal. You know, Rollmaster is not, if you build tank vampires, then the players are going to get broken. I want to just show you real quickly. This is a level 6 rogue. While we're talking about this stuff, level 6 rogue doesn't have a magic item. This is a vampire. I need to target him. I need to heal him first, real quick. I was playing around a little earlier using my macro. There we go. All right. So, rogue goes right up. Obviously, toe to toe. Rogue goes. Looks like there are Argon going on here. Melee, short sword. I forgot to target. There we go. Now, let's see. I just want to point this out real quickly. 85. Here comes the crit, right? Oh my god, here comes the crit. Okay. 65. Oh, what's this? Proof against iron. That's right. Unless you have the right kind of equipment, you ain't dropping a lot of crits. Granted, 15 DP, 15 piercing. Never mind the D because you ain't critting them. 15's not bad. But again, remember, once you get him to this guy's got. Did I goof up on his? Oh yeah, see, I fucking. This should be half because Foolish. Yes, he's only supposed to have 51 hit points. 15 out of 51 is that's a decent amount. You can still whittle down his hit points, but remember, it has to be hit points plus body development, and then he breaks into pieces. So like the vampire would like go to mist, mechanically, just as he discombobulates. So he turns into mist or whatever the fuck. And then you would have to do something like sprinkle it with holy water, flame, drag his chunky, misty bits onto like sacred ground, or dip them under the underwater. There's some stuff, but you actually have to do something beyond just concussive hit beat the shit out of a vampire, and they regenerate hit points. So yeah, now the paladin here, he has a magic weapon. So the paladin swinging, right? Oh, that's a fucking 1. He takes that magical weapon and throws it right out the door. All right, let's try that again. This is just for fun. I just want to show you why you don't have a toe-to-toe fight with a vampire. Okay, so this was a really crappy roll. So 17 plus 26, right? What's that? He only has 8 hit points left? Yeah, wham! All that blood. He's not happy, right? Do it again. Oh, not with the vampire. Swing again just for shits and giggles, right? 57 with a 31. All right, so it's 29. Stone tight bow and groin. Savor the triumph. Immunity, bleeding, is stunned, right? But still, another 15. So that's a lot of damage, right? Now, he's prone because he's out of hit points. He's at negative 36, right? Which, if we look at his skills, 31, 36. Okay, you've discombobulated him. You've turned him into chunky bits, whatever, right? Um, Again, these vampires are not designed to go toe to toe. If you're doing it, you have to ask yourself, did the players earn it? Because if they didn't earn it, you probably screwed up somewhere. These kinds of vampires should obviously be behind the scenes, manipulative jackasses, right? The players shouldn't be able to just tank them. They're not tanks. They're never supposed to be tanks. I don't know how else I can say it. You know, they're sophisticated creatures, antagonists. These are like bosses and mini bosses. And if you want to throw vampires at them, give them some thralls that have vampire talents, weaknesses, boons, and flaws, but then reskin them to be physically combative. And you could probably really, really, really ruin their day by having, a vampire knight, it's sword, board, plate mail. Let's go. Okay, now the fact that even if you give them lower hit points, it's going to be harder to hurt them, right? But yeah, don't give them lower hit points. Give them lots of hit points because they're not going to be casting spells, right? You give them just a pure melee fighter, or God forbid, a rogue vampire, right? A stealthy assassin with an ambush skill. Can you imagine ambush with a claw or bite attack? So he sneaks up behind you. You don't see him because he's got like a million freaking points in stalking, and then right, damn, um, that would suck, literally, right? Just there's so many possibilities. If you want to make combat vampires, you totally can, and in this system, it's super easy. You just take one of these guys, duplicate him, right click, duplicate. He comes up, change level, lower the level, right? Go in here, delete the spells. I'd keep his stocking up. I'd probably up his ambush, especially if I was gonna make a fighter or like a rogue assassin kind of thing. Oh hell yeah. Um, but like get rid of this stuff, right? This is only times one as well, by the way. So times one. He still has the influence and social awareness. Maybe he's a thrall. Maybe these are like halves. Yeah, I'd make these halves because if you're gonna make an actual like fighter guy, you're gonna strip a lot of this away. Power development, that's out the window. And now we go over here and we're gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna give him melee weapon, whatever weapon he chooses, times two. Body development times two, right? Yeah, I just fuck me. This could suck. You know what? I'm gonna give him plate mail, or I'm gonna give him, chain mail, or whatever. I'm gonna make him a fighter. Great. That sucks. Don't forget to give him maneuver and armor and footwork. Get those negatives down. Hell, pump that strength up, right? Maybe swap out that bonus for memory, give it a strength, right? Suddenly, presence, nah. Cut that in half, give it a strength. Quickness, give it to, put 8 points in quickness, 8 points in strength, plus another eight. Give him 16 points in strength. I know that might be a bit much. 16, 20. What is that? 24. Yeah, give him 12 and 12. Quickness, strength. Holy crap! Just blank these out, swap it over here to quickness and strength, and have him go to town. You could have a lot of fun with this. All right, just some things to think about. If you I want to reiterate, if you're going to do a vampire fight and you're going to use the creature law one vampires, they are creatures of subtlety and cunning and vicious spell use, brutal spell use. Feel free to throw a spawn at him, throw a thrall, throw a minion, right? And guess what? The really fun part is these guys are smart enough to realize that you're on the trail of a vampire. What's the best way to get you off their trail? By giving you a vampire. The characters find a vampire. They kill a vampire. Yay, we won. And all the master vampire has to do is chill the hell out and or leave, change to a different town. he's still there. He's still active, right? I mean, what if he just like, you know what? I'm just gonna abstain from making a bunch of victims for a week or 2 weeks, or I'm gonna have some minions throw me in a coffin during the day, put me in the back of a completely sealed uh, wagon, and we're gonna travel by day all day to the next village. So I'm a day away and doing vampire things. We're gonna do this for a week. So I'm a week away. A week away. I'm hundreds of miles away, and I've just straight up re-fucking located while you chopped up the dime store throwaway vampire thrall. Yeah, you ain't ever catching that kind of vampire. And that being said, this has been Creature Feature Friday, featuring the vampire on Dice at the Table's Tactical Onion. I will see you guys next week.